see you guys in the dark.
I'm a female, and when I was a child, around 10 years old, my parents ran a construction business. This had several employees on the payroll at any given time, mostly to drive gravel or cement trucks for them. My dad is a kind but naive man who'd often hire friends of friends who were down on their luck to give them a chance to get back on their feet. It never worked out well, because my dad somehow always gets linked up with the scrungiest of people. They had a lot of creeps over the years, but I think the worst one might have been Ben. Ben was a friend of my dad's dad, who also worked for us. Ben supposedly had an old work injury that made it difficult for him to work any job where he had to be on his feet all day. My grandfather begged my dad to give him a job as a driver, and my dad finally agreed. From the day that she met him, Ben had made my mom extremely uncomfortable. He just had one of those weird vibes that you can't explain, and everybody but my dad picked up on it. Like I said, my dad is extremely naive. Mom wouldn't let me and my younger sister around him for any length of time. We were homeschooled at the time, and my mom worked in the office, so we were around quite a bit. She kept telling my dad that we should let him go, but my dad wouldn't because he said that he didn't have any legitimate reason to fire him. This is the weird part. Whenever my sister and I were at the office on a slow day, my grandfather would always try to come get us over and sit with him and Ben. He would always ask, "Don't you want to go for a ride with us in the big truck?" Ben himself couldn't talk to us. He let my grandfather handle that. We were shy kids, so we never agreed to it. But he was so damn persistent. It reached a point where it was literally every single time he saw us there. My sister and I would take turns hiding in the bathroom so that we didn't have to go and be around them. They'd always do it when my mom was out of the room, and they'd back off whenever she was around. My dad was never around when it happened, and I don't think that he believed it. I mean, who wants to believe that? My mom eventually had enough and told my dad that Ben had to go. A few years later, we found out that Ben had taken a young girl. My grandfather had another friend who had a daughter about my age, out for a ride in the truck, and molested her. My grandfather was enabling him the whole time. I shudder to think what would have happened if my mom hadn't watched out for us. And yes, to answer the question, I do believe my grandfather was a pedo as well, not just an enabler. And I think deep down my dad absolutely knew it. It was common rumor in my community growing up that my grandfather had molested my aunt when she was a child. None of the family ever talked about it, other than my mom, who was a hero, and would never let things go. She always asked my dad, and he'd just say that he didn't know, and then change the subject. The fact that he didn't immediately jump to defend his dad against accusations that serious is a red flag. I know I have no contact with my grandfather, or the rest of that side of the family, and my life is much better for it. Back in the mid-90s, my family had lived on the island in BC, and my stepdad had gotten a job at the main Toronto University, and we were to move that summer. I was 13 at the time, not prepared for what a large city had lined up. The trip was long, and I ended up grounded before we even got there. Something about running away and a tantrum on the ferry early on. But in the building we lived there was a yard, and kids played baseball, and I was excited. In my first month, this one tall kid threatened me with a large hunting knife, which led on charges. And that following summer, and next summer, I had been approached by 2 pedophiles. Never have I ever. The first incident, I was at an arcade, and played pinball a lot. This older guy had chatted me up, saying how he needed help moving some stuff, and would pay me $50. I was like, hell yeah, why not? So we left, and we went around to the back alley where I guess I used up one of my 9 lives. Because I got in his car, and he got in, turns to me and says, "Actually, there are no boxes. I just wanted to suck your dick a little bit." I was stunned. Then I jumped out, yelled "you freak," and then ran off. Who knows what could have happened there. The next time it happened again at the arcade, which I guess is a staging ground for them. but this one guy started chatting me up. But he definitely played a long game. He apparently had an independent record label for indie bands, and after a little while had asked me if I'd put up posters for him, and then I'd get paid. I agreed and did that. I'd go around putting them up, marking the address, and thought that I was doing a good job and would get paid. After a while, this person, we'll call Dave, would be a little friendlier, and he would ask when I was going to visit him at his place and come hang out. I was like, nah, avoided that, and he eventually found out that I played chess. Started to bring that up too. One day we went to the library and played chess. I figured it was a public enough place. We played, and on the last game he was making a bet, and bet me if he won that I'd have to go visit him at his place. I have no idea why it was made, but in the end I managed to draw the game. After that last encounter, I distanced myself, and stopped seeing him in general. For sure he was a predator, and I dodged that one. Years later, when I was 16, I got an email from him. It said how he was aware of a certain amount of internet activities, and had to talk to him, especially if I wanted to be safe. I was not having any of that, and responded immediately telling him that I knew he was a pedophile, and that if he ever tried to talk to me or blackmail me, I was going to go to the police, and tell them about him and his advances. I was scared, and he never contacted me again. But now that I'm an adult, I realize maybe I should have told the cops, and hoped that no one else had to deal with that creep. So when I was about 14, I went to the store with my mother. It was mid-July, I believe. Something like that. It was a hot summer day, and we had just gone into the store. The produce aisles were right there by the door. They were really narrow, just enough room to push a shopping cart through. I was wearing shorts and a school tee. Well, this man comes in. He was in his mid-40s, really scruffy looking, gray pepper hair, kinda average weight. Well, he looks around, then at me. I didn't really pay it much attention, and was helping my mom find vegetables and stuff. Next thing I know, I feel a gust of wind hit my back. He was right behind me. He breathes down my neck and says, goddamn. Looks at my ass. Mind you, I'm 14, so I was scared and in shock. So I look at my mom in horror as this man is centimeters away from touching me. She grits her teeth and tells him to fuck off before she calls the cops. Well, he walks off with a smug look and goes into another aisle. So we talk for a minute about it, and go back to looking for our things so that we can get the hell out of there. Then we look over, and he's peeking at me from around the aisle. Then I look down. He was jerking off to a preteen. What the fuck? So my mom picks up a can of peas, naturally, and throws it at this man's head. It misses him because he dodges, and he books it out of the store. She called the cops, but they never got back to us, so I'm pretty sure that they never found him. Needless to say, I've been scared ever since, and no longer wear shorts or anything that shows too much skin anymore. I know I didn't do anything wrong. It was summer, hot, and I was just a kid. But it makes me feel like I was one of those people who asked for it somehow, by simply wearing shorts. I just wanted to feel comfortable that day. For my first job right out of high school, I worked at a fast food chain. None of us at the restaurant knew each other before then, but we quickly became a little group that had a great time together. Spent our minimum wage on getting drunk at house parties after work. One of these particular friends, let's call him R, was your typical awkward, funny gay friend. The type of guy that was friends with everyone. Quirky was just his personality. He was a floater, never really held down a job or a stable home. Always moving around between friends' houses and stuff like that. We wouldn't see R often, but we remained close and in contact, like with Facebook and Snapchat. He was invited to big events like weddings, birthdays, and New Year's Eve parties. He would stay at my house, and he was known as uncle to my kids. Early this year, a couple of us became concerned when we couldn't get in contact with him. After some searching, one of our friends told us that they found R and that he was in jail. Long story short, He had been involved in a massive pedophile ring spanning several countries. He was found to have been making and in possession of child pornography and bestiality. To say I was fucking shocked doesn't even begin to cover it. My world shattered in that moment. Months later, I still can't fathom it. He is yet to be sentenced. But no punishment fits the crime that has been committed. I'm broken for the families that he hurt. I'm in disbelief that someone I thought that I knew in and out, I actually knew nothing about. But most of all, there is a burning rage inside of me. A part of me that wishes I could turn back time to the last time that I saw him, knowing what I know now. The hardest part is that looming realization that you cannot trust a soul, because you never truly know a person. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. In the center of town was the post office, the fire hall, a store, and a bar. The bar was a rooming house. The second story consisted of 7 rooms. Men could rent monthly. My friend and I, all 12-year-old boys, would hang out around the post office, skateboarding after school. One day we started hearing someone whistling, the weet-woo cat-calling whistle, over and over. We figured out that it was coming from one of the rooms upstairs above the bar. We ignored it, but it was pretty weird. The next day on the bus to school, a girl handed me a flannel shirt that I must have left down by the post office. I noticed that there was something in the front pocket. It was a few pieces of paper folded up. I started to open it and realized there was a magazine picture of a naked man wrapped up in the papers. A Playgirl picture. I hurried up and put it in my backpack. When I got home, I opened it back up. There was a picture and a note. He knew my name, and he talked about enjoying watching me and my friends. I can't really remember exactly what it said. Needless to say, it did freak me out. I walked down the road from my house, burnt the picture and the note. The whistling continued, and he would even drive behind my bus when I was getting out of school. I eventually did tell my parents, and they did call the police, who came over and asked me questions. Unfortunately, I had burnt the evidence that would have been used. Now my dad went to the bar often, and everyone who lived above the bar drank at the bar. I'm not sure if he ever had words with the guy or not. My dad was not a guy who backed down from a fight, so I'm kind of surprised nothing like that happened. Eventually the guy moved out of town, and I never saw him again. Actually, I really wouldn't know if I had, since I never got a real good look at him. For all I know, he's still watching me. That was over 20 years ago. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.